Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife, Kara, is at work, and this is the SPK Shark made by Alex Steingraber. SPK stands for Steingraber Performance Knives. His slogan is Geometry Cuts, and I absolutely love that. Love that. You guys know I love that. So I was really excited to get this knife and review it, test it, check it out. We haven't sharpened it yet, but that will be in the end of this video. So let's talk about geometry cuts, because geometry does cut. This blade is super, super thin. I measured it right now before sharpening, about 8 thousandths behind the edge. And even when I check up higher up, the blade, I'm still under 15 thousandths. I mean, this thing is a laser. This is the definition of a laser. I love the stone washing, or not, sorry. I love the finish. It actually goes from like where it looks like it's almost stone washed, and then in other angles you can see the belt satin. I love that. It looks really, really good. Very attractive. It's in 4V steel, and these things are made in small batches. So you can, be pretty confident that it's most likely going to have a pretty good heat treat. And as of right now, I have zero complaints on the heat treat. If anything, I am overwhelmingly impressed. And I think, because I haven't done it yet, that I'm going to be even more impressed after I sharpen it. So using this thing, man, this thing cuts like a champ. Man, does this thing cut good. It just screams through the material you cut. There's no resistance. You do have a little sharpening choil here. Like if that catches on something, that'd be probably the only resistance. This thing just blazes through anything you throw at it, even if it's got tape, whatever, it just screams through it. It loves to cut, and it does it very, very well. The finish on it, I find that, the tape, when it gets stuck on it, just like any finish, you're going to have to, get it cleaned off and stuff. Stuff does stick to it, like when you're cutting through tape and stuff like that, but that's any knife. So you're going to want to take care of the steel, obviously, especially since it's going to be in a sheath, which we'll get to here in a second. The utility cuts, just as good. It has a nice, acute, very, very precision fine tip. You can see it is basically like one swooping belly, but the tip gives you a great ability to get to it and, use it from sideways directions, with the finger on top of the spine, however you want, really. You can get to that tip pretty easily, and it works great. No complaints on the utility cuts. It works fantastic. The tip is fine enough to where it penetrates nice and deep, and then that slight bit of belly really, pulls in the material as you drag it through. You can get nice fine utility cuts. If you had to trace something out that, was drawn, you could easily do it. Lot of control with this knife. Now, I did get a couple questions after the unboxing about, well, does it rotate in your hand? Because with rounded handles, that is a thing, that things can rotate in your hand. Now, I didn't have that big of an issue with it, and I'm going to show you why, but that is a thing, though, where round knives do rotate in your hand, especially if they're not really thick and if they don't have texturing. And this is micarta. It looks like a natural canvas micarta. It has a good tactile texture, I guess, but not aggressive or anything. It doesn't have a sandpaper effect, or I can't think, it doesn't have like a grippiness or anything, but it's micarta. So micarta already has a nice, warm, comfortable feel to it. But the sides are flat, as you can see. The edges are rounded, so you do have that nice, comfortable roundness, and the thickness is the exact thickness of which I can squeeze. And what I mean by that is that if it's smaller, then I'm going to have to squeeze extra hard to get a good grip. If it's bigger, then you get a full-size grip and you can use extra arm muscles and wrist muscles to really hang on to it. This is right at that thinness where it's not too thin, where I can still get a solid grip to prevent it from spinning. Now, once I put my finger on the spine, it's really not going to spin. It also has a nice taper to it where back here it gets a little thicker, where you can really press, your pinky, and ring finger into it and really hold it nice and solid back there, regardless of these two fingers. So you do have quite a bit of control. And the I guess you call it the finger trail area, the ricasso of the blade, you can really get up nice and tight to it and put your fingers in here and kind of pressure them in there and really hang on tight for really good cuts. So I didn't have any spinning issues. I can't speak for everybody's hands, but in my hands, I did not. Even in different, like different grips like this, just seemed like every grip seemed very comfortable, and I didn't get much spin. If there was a little bit, it was very controllable to the point where I wasn't thinking like, oh man, this thing just, is a spinning knife and I can't control it. I never thought that one bit. Obviously, it'd be very easy to replace different micarta scales if you wanted to make your own or anything like that. And the edge, this is 4V, so it does have great edge retention, and, it's a great, strong steel. I haven't dealt with it a lot. You could definitely find lots of videos on that, probably from Citric and Ada, Thomas Outdoors, Outpost 76, Super Steel Steve. So definitely go check them out for information on the steel. This is, what I'm just basically talking about this one and not all the steels, all in one. But 4V is an incredible steel, and a lot of people that like steel love 4V. So that says a lot. Now, carrying it, I carried it pretty much one way. And this, here's the sheet that it comes in. You do have, it's got, a good amount of tension. You can pop it off. I ran my belt through it and carried it front carry. I carried it on the front of my belt right next to the belt buckle, and it worked great. No problems. It held on really good, and I don't think that's very conventional, and I don't think it was made to do that, but it just happened to work out that way, and that's the way I did it. But, carrying it in the front, my shirt covered it just fine. You could also, if you don't like carrying in the front, which I had no issues carrying in the front, I could easily get to it. I could easily hide it. If I wanted to conceal it, you could carry scout carry and just put it on the back too, the same way I put it on the front. Now, you could also easily throw it in your pocket or your back pocket. I mean, it's not a big knife. So we'll come back to the sheath in a second, but let's just show a couple size comparisons really quick. Here's the Hinder XM18 3-inch, and you can see they are damn near the same exact size. This blade length is 2 7/8, so just under 3 inches. And all in all, it was 6 7/8, so it's practically a 7-inch knife. Here is the Civivi Elemenum. Another great size comparisons. They are the exact same length. And here is another fixed blade that I like. This one's designed by Mike Emler and was made by Artisan, but it's another little tiny fixed blade that has great geometry, very thin behind the edge. Not as thin as this one, but still very thin. But you can see they're pretty close. This is the Artisan Sea Snake by Mike Emler. So you see the size of it. It is a smaller EDC fixed blade. So let's get into some sharpening, and then we'll talk about some good and bad. Before I sharpen, I do want to say I don't need to sharpen this. Like when you say geometry cuts. Even with this thing dull, it will still cut, and it's not dull. I want to sharpen it, so I want to feel that 4V on my stones. It still has a pretty good edge. I could easily strop it back, easily. So I just want to make that clear that the edge retention has been great on this thing. I have been using it. I have been cutting with it. It's definitely a knife that you want to grab when you have stuff to cut up. So I just want to make that clear that I'm not sharpening because the edge, you know, went to crap or that I need to. The edge is just fine. So, but I want to. So let's get to it. Here's a close-up of the edge before I start sharpening, so you can see how it looked coming from the factory. It was a great edge. So I'm going to show the entire sharpening that I did on this knife, all in full. I'm starting out with 160/120 micron venev diamond stones. These venev diamond stones are amazing. They last a very long time. This is the Dragon series, which is a little bit thicker bonding agent, or, you know, it's a thicker, the sides that cut, because it's double-sided, each side is thicker than, say, the Phoenix series, which is 1 millimeter. The Dragon series is 2 millimeter. And right away, I can tell, putting this on the stone, that this is a really good heat treat. I can feel it. I can feel the way the steel goes across the stone. And then here's the edge. It's sharpening very fast. That's why I'm just going to show the full sharpening in this video. You can see the edge is already looking really good from my first stone. And I had a burr, so I flipped to the other side. And it's sharpening up really, really good. Now, if I was going to explain to somebody what a good heat treat feels like versus a bad heat treat, it's hard. You can feel the stone cutting the steel, and it feels like the steel is very hard. Versus like say if you took Play-Doh and dragged it across the stone and was trying to sharpen it, that's like kind of like what a bad heat treat feels like. Versus, say, trying to sharpen a wood or something, you know, like the difference there is huge. Well, it's the same thing like with the steels. The bad heat treats are usually softer, and they feel like that on the stone. And then a good heat treat feels nice and hard, and it feels like you're cutting the steel. The angle that I sharpened it on, I didn't check it or anything. It was a little bit laid back than the factory edge was. But this thing is so thin behind the edge that, one, it's going to sharpen quickly. Thin edges sharpen faster than thick edges. So it's sharpening extremely fast. Each stone, this stone right here, I think we already flipped stones. This stone is the 100/80 micron. And it's sharpening very fast. The angle's easy to hold, and it's a lot easier to hold an angle when you have a good heat treat too, because you're not, because the steel's actually cutting and removing, and it's not like just being pushed around. It's kind of hard to explain, to put into a term for people to understand if they're not actually doing it themselves, but the steel is actually being removed with every swipe in a productive way. So it's easy to hold your angle, and you don't have to do as many swipes, especially with these type of stones. Now we are flipping stones. Now this next one should be 50/40 micron. And I wasn't, I didn't really have a progression that I was going to go to like planned. I just planned on going to something that felt really good, and so I'm going to switch it to one more stone after this, because not that I couldn't have kept going, because I absolutely could have. I could have put a mirror edge on this thing. I guarantee it would have been great. But I wanted to leave a nice, very aggressive edge, but yet fine enough to where it's not considered a toothy edge, but it has a ton of bite. And this 50/40 micron is basically like, it's pretty much like 600 grit stone. That's what I would consider it, between like 550 and 600 grit. And yeah, I flew after my first stone. The other stones, I flew right through them. It seemed like I only had to do a few passes on each side and I would get a burr because it's so thin. But not only that, because the stone cut the steel so good that it didn't take much. So as you see, I'm already flipping. That was very fast. My grip progression went right over the top of the surface very cleanly. The burr rolled over. It was good. So this one right here is 20/14 micron. So it's basically, this is the first step to, if I wanted to do a polished edge, I would have 2 more stones after this with my venev stones that would go up to like 5,000 grit. But this is like right at the verge of where it's not a mirror edge, it's not a polished edge, and it's not a really toothy edge. It's a fine edge, but you can still have a very aggressive, toothy finish at a finer grit. And we'll look at the edge after this. But it felt so good on this stone, and everything just went very, very well. Like I said, I was very impressed. I was also very impressed with the burr, the way the burr removed. And I'll also show that here in a second, but just how fast it went across the stone, just how fast it sharpened. So if you look at this, you can see the grip pattern looks beautiful. It's nice and flat. The edge came out perfectly flat. It looks really good. It's nice and even, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. We'll take another closer look after I'm completely done, because I'm not completely done yet. That was just one side. So now I'm doing the other side, and then once I get the burr to roll over, I am going to knock the burr off. I'm actually going to use a piece of ceramic. I did actually do a couple passes on this stone to knock the burr off, but I find that I get really good results if I just do it on the ceramic stone after, if I have a big burr. Now, higher grits for these venev stones, like if I would have went to the next stone, you hardly have a burr. Like, you don't even have to strop or anything. Like, you can just go fresh off the stone because the burr is so small, it's like it's not even there. A lot of times I don't even strop after using the higher grits of venev stones. Sometimes I do, it just kind of depends. In this case, I did wind up knocking the burr off because I'm not quite to that level of the venev stone, or that high, or that micron level. And then here I'm just taking a couple slow passes right before I finish, checking my edge really good, looking at it really good. I take a couple really slow swipes, just kind of rolling the burr back and forth a little bit before I finish, making sure everything looks nice and clean. My edge is nice and flat. Oh, I guess I didn't record the ceramic. I did hit it a couple times on the ceramic. I guess I forgot to put that in. And then I just did a couple passes on the strop. It went really quick. Your edge has to be extremely sharp to go through paper towel like this, and especially this clean. Now, the receipt I'm about to show, it's a wrinkled up receipt. I should have used a flat one. But paper, I mean, you can usually cut paper with, even a dull knife, as long as the apex on your edge is good. But you can kind of hear it when it's really good and when it's going really clean, like you're going to hear in a second with this piece of paper. And then we'll take a look at the edge. Okay, so the edge came out extremely sharp. Okay, here is a 40 time magnification of the edge, because it's not easy getting this edge on camera as thin as it is. We will take a real life video of the edge here in just a second, but here it is magnified, very, very close, and you can see how clean the grit lines are. Very clean grit lines, and you can see how flat the edge is. That little spot on the edge, that's just some paper towel. It's nothing on the edge besides just some, whatever. but you can see it here in real life without the magnifying glass, and you can still see the grit lines, or the grit pattern is nice and uniform. They all run the same direction, and the edge is nice and flat. The apex is really clean. The bevel matches on from side to side. I'm very impressed with the grind on this knife, and just how good the grind was, how even it is, every bit of it. Very, very impressed with the steel, I guess you could say, on this knife. So the edge came out really, really good. I'm very impressed with the level of sharpness, and that's because of the heat treat on this thing. When you have a knife, this one being heat treated to 65 to 66 HRC, come on, that's incredible. And that's the benefits to having a good heat treat, and it's sharpened up so easily. Now you could take a budget steel that wouldn't feel as good as this thing, or sharpen up as easily as this thing did. And that's the benefits to having a great heat treat, is that you can take these super steels, and they're even easier to sharpen than some of these budget steels, using the right stone, obviously. But very impressed with the way the edge came out, very impressed with the way it felt on the stone. It's just stupid sharp. It'll go right through a paper towel like nothing. It'll go through anything like nothing. I mean, the edge just came out wicked, wicked sharp. And, those venev stones also, they help take some of these super steels. They help take those edges to the next level, which I also like. But it's all due to this heat treat. Great, great job. Now, talking about some bad things, I really honestly can't complain about much. The micarta, it seems, it's not the greatest quality of micarta, but for all I know, that's what the owner wanted. I don't know. But that's neither here or there. It's really is not that bad. I just, I would have preferred a different micarta, but I mean, it looks just fine. It's just not the best quality, in my opinion. Maybe you could scuff it up and make it a little bit better. It does have some fibers coming out in places, which I do like. The sheath, I'm not that impressed with the sheath. The sheath worked just fine. It carried just fine, but it has a little bit of play inside there. Maybe you could have used another pin right here, but that's another thing. You could get another sheath made. And then, ordering this, I'm sure you could, I don't know, maybe you could pick different micarta, or your own micarta, or even have your own micarta made separately from some, who knows. But I'm just saying, like, that's not really that big of a deal. And, with this 4V heat treat, it's heat treated so good, and it feels so good, but he has other steels that you can get. Like, you can get K390, Vanex Super Clean, LC200N, 10V, and I don't know, maybe some other steels, but the prices range between $175 and $275 depending on the steel you choose. A little pricey, but they're hand done. I can't complain. I really honestly can't complain. This thing is amazing, and saying geometry cuts, that's a bold statement. Not even a bold statement. I'm messed up my words there. It's a great statement. It's what knives should do. And in this example, or, with his knives, he's proving it. He's showing it. So I love that. And doing these heat treats at these small batch levels, doing quality heat treats, the community, by buying one, gets to experience the difference. They get to see what it really means, because a lot of people don't understand. They don't get it. And it's not that they don't get it, it's just that how could they, right? Until you experience it and really feel the difference, it's it's hard to say. A lot of times, with like some of the production steels, you can't tell one from another. But when you get a good quality heat treat on, whatever steel, night and day difference, especially sharpening and the level of sharpness. And yeah, I'm loving it. I think it's an incredible job. I really can't complain about much, so I'm not gonna. And there you guys go. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.